Hey guys, this is a pretty long video, so I'll make this short and sweet. In this video, I'll be introducing a tier list of all the perks in Dead by Daylight in relation to how they affect gameplay with the artist. While I'm by no means an expert, I've tested nearly every single perk, and these have been my findings in most of my matches. After the tier list, I'll be giving you my perk suggestions, that way you can better pair it with my add-ons video that I made before this. Enjoy! So in this portion of the video, I'll be going over a tier list of all the perks in Dead by Daylight. I won't go into every single one, but I'll point out my favorites from each tier, that way you can understand the builds portion of this video later on. First, I have Barbecue. You gain a stack every time you hook a survivor and get up to 4 stacks for a total of 100% blood points in-game, but you also can see the aura of any survivors that are 40 meters from the hook. This is great not only for blood points, but it's also really nice to have a lot of information after you've hooked someone, and it also really helps when you need to get cross maps with Birdie. For Enduring, pallet stuns are reduced by 50%, and as a chase killer you want the quick recovery, but a lot of survivors spray job, so it depends on the map and the MMR, but I really like to bring Enduring, and I get a lot of situations where I get a lot of benefit from it. Discordance is an information perk. Anytime 2 or more survivors are on a gen, it will be revealed in yellow with a noise notification. This is fantastic for information. If you pair it with severed hands, you can get the maximum value out of it, but I just like it to kind of deter gen rushing. With Iron Maiden, you can search lockers 50% faster, and any survivor who exits a locker will be exposed for 30 seconds and their aura is revealed for 4 seconds. There are a lot of survivors who will jump in and out of lockers to instantly repel the crows, so this gives you an advantage in the ability to instant on them if they are trying to do this mid-chase. The next perk I have is Lightborn. This renders flashlights and flashbangs useless and shows the aura of any survivor that tries to blind you. This is also really fun for Blast Mine since it will reveal the aura of the survivor who used it. This is not essential for the artist, I'm just kind of reminding you that it's my favorite perk and it wouldn't be my video without telling you to use it. I love this perk so much. Next I have Lethal Pursuer. This shows the aura of all 4 survivors for 9 seconds at the beginning of the match. This is a great perk for setting up staggered hits or taking advantage in early game. Birdie does technically have built-in Lethal Pursuer with her ability to find survivor at gens in early game, so take it with a grain of salt, but this just feels really nice to use. The next 2 I have are my preferred gen regression perks. Pain Resonance is Birdie's perk, and hooking a survivor on a scourge hook will regress the generator with the most progress by 15% and reveal the survivors who are working on the gen. This is really great for slowdown and information, which is why it's my preferred one. Next we have Pop. After hooking a survivor, the next time you kick a gen, it'll instantly regress by 25%. This is one of the most powerful regression perks in the game, and I can admit that it is a little bit overkill bringing Pop and Pain Resonance, but I like it for the situations to where I can't hook them on a scourge hook, but I need a bit of gen regression, especially towards the later half of the game. For what can be considered the B tier, these are the perks that are nice to bring and either bring great value into a match or just feel nice and add to the gameplay. Most of the hexes are in this tier just because of how powerful they are, but in my experience, I don't get good value from bringing hexes, so I tend to not rely on them as much. However, they're still great perks, I just never get good spawns, so I just stopped bringing. The first perk I have is Tinker. Once a gen reaches 70% of progress, it makes a noise notification, and you gain the undetectable status effect for 16 seconds. This is just a great information perk all around, and it's also nice for shooting off crows and sneaking up on survivors. Next I have Blood Favor. After hitting a survivor, all pallets within 32 meters are blocked off for 15 seconds. This forces survivors into unsafe areas, but with your crows you can technically shut down loops, so it depends on your playstyle, but this is a really powerful perk and this is probably one of my favorites if I had to choose out of the hexes. Next I have Plaything. After hooking a survivor, they gain the Oblivious status effect until they cleanse their respective totem. You can pair this with Throw the Hunt and Pentimento, so you can get a lot of value out of all 3. The ability to sneak up on survivors really helps out in a match, and this also helps to get the most value out of Pentimento, because with Throw the Hunt, they're going to be forced to cleanse rather than boon. I'm all ears. Anytime a survivor performs a rushed action, their aura is shown for 6 seconds. This is really good for learning to go against survivors and predicting their movements. Breaking line of sight is key to going against Birdie, so this just helps, especially if you don't quite know where to angle your Dire Crows. For Thana, for every injured survivor you have, you gain a 5% penalty for a maximum of 20% penalty on any of the gen, healing, or sabotaging speeds. Because the artist has a Sloppy Butcher add-on, this can really help slow down things in a match, and it just pairs really well. Lullaby is surprisingly an effective hex to bring, and it is actually my least favorite hex to go against, but how it works is that it messes with the sound notifications for skill checks for a maximum of 5 tokens after you've hooked a survivor, and it gets rid of the sound notification entirely. You're able to shoot crows across the map the second a survivor fails a skill check, and it's just great for information and slowing things down in a match. Agitation increases your movement speed when carrying a survivor by 16%, and your terror radius is increased by 12 meters. This is great for getting a full advantage out of Pain Resonance if RNG is not in your favor. Crowd Control is another hex. Anytime a survivor performs a rushed vault, it blocks off the window for 20 seconds. This is really great for corralling survivors into unsafe areas, but be wary because it can encourage W space, which is definitely the downfall of artists, but it is a pretty fun perk to play with. Grim Embrace. After hooking each survivor once, the entity blocks all gens for 40 seconds. This is a fantastic slowdown, especially if you compare it with other Maximize Obsession perks, and it works great towards the end of the game where you need the added pressure. Next we have Deadlock. After a gen has been completed, the gen with the most progress is then blocked for 30 seconds. This one is great over the course of the entire game, but works especially well towards the latter end of the game with only 1 to 2 gens remaining. Next can be considered the C tier or the medium existence for perks. These are the perks that don't really add or take away from the gameplay, and if you like to use them, I definitely encourage it, but most don't fit my gameplay style. My favorites from the list are Nurse's Calling. The aura of survivors healing are revealed within 28 meters. Being able to see where people are healing is a great piece of information, especially if the people are trying to heal either in chase or around you while you're chasing someone else. Next is No Way Out. Once a survivor touches an exit gate handle, it's blocked for a maximum of 60 seconds depending on the amount of tokens you've gained after hooking a survivor. A really great endgame perk because while Birdie is good at patrolling exit gates, this is perfect for when you want to know exactly where a survivor is, if it's a one-man standing, or if you need that added pressure for endgame. Next is Force Penance. Any survivor who takes a protection hit is broken for 80 seconds. Keeping people injured is key in matches, and this does a great job to go against a really altruistic team. After downing a survivor, anyone within your terror radius screams and has their aura revealed for 6 seconds, and Birdie's terror radius is 32 meters by the way. This is a really great information perk in general and great for snowballs if needed. Next we have Blood Warden. After hooking a survivor when the exit gates are open, the survivors are blocked from leaving for 60 seconds. This is another perk that is a great reward but isn't always viable depending on the match and the team, but when it works, it works. Next we have Corrupt Intervention. At the start of the match, 3 gens furthest from the killer are blocked for 120 seconds. This is a very strong killer perk and good for setting up a 3 gen, but it just isn't my favorite to bring, but it's a fantastic perk in general for early game. And finally we have Sloppy Butcher. Hitting survivors gives them the Mangled and Hemorrhage status effect, slowing down healing speeds and making the survivors bleed more. This works really well with things like the Natophobia and Nurse's Calling and can help combat boons a little bit. So for D tier, these perks again don't really harm your gameplay style, but they don't add a benefit in any way, or in general just weaker when there's better alternatives. For example, while Oppression and Overcharge can be useful for information in terms of gen slowdown, they're really not my favorites unless you pair it with things like Lullaby. Coup is a little too weak to have much merit, but if they did buff it, I'd definitely consider running it, and Dark Devotion is nice but can be inconsistent and doesn't really give you a leg up as much as it would if you were actually a stealth killer. Overall, these perks aren't terrible, but I don't recommend them unless you want a good meme build. And finally, F tier. These perks in general are just not good or really don't help at all in-game. Things like Gearhead, despite the buff, or Strider don't add anything to the gameplay, and you're better off leaving it for meme builds or off your build entirely. This includes things like Overwhelming Presence, Nemesis, Bloodhound, or Unrelenting. I don't recommend these perks at all. For the builds portion, it really depends on playstyle, but as a chase and information killer, I think that she has the largest flexibility when it comes to perks that can be used in her builds. My least favorite are the full Mambo perks of like Corrupt, Tinker, Pop, Ruin, just because it tends to be a bit of overkill. I follow the Wedding Chant build, something old, which is Barbecue, something new, which is Gen Regression, something borrowed, which is a chase perk, and then something blue, which is an information perk. In the next section, I'll be going over the type of builds I'd recommend, along with some fun builds in general for the killer. To start off, my build is Barbecue, Lightborn, Pain Resonance, Pop, or Lethal. Barbecue for the information and blood points, Lightborn to combat flashlights, flashbangs, or blast mine. Pain Resonance is a trustworthy gen regression perk and information as well. Pop if I want a stronger regression, and then Lethal Pursuer is really good for early game. For a comp build, Pop, Ruin, Tinker, Corrupt, it's kind of hard to beat this one. Most gen regression all around, and mainly because Birdie has built-in information, you can technically go without it and still do pretty well, especially because she has some add-ons that can be really valuable in comp. For an artist-specific build, I would recommend Barbecue, Iron Maiden, Pain Resonance, Discordance, or Blood Favor. Barbecue for blood points and information, Iron Maiden for when people try to take the crows off mid-chase, Pain Resonance for gen regression, and then Discordance for information, and to pair with Severed Hands as well. And then also Blood Favor is just really fun to use in chases. For a chase-heavy build, I would recommend I'm All Ears, Enduring, Spirit Fury, and Thrilling Tremors. I'm All Ears for the in-chase aura reading to help with crows, and Fury combo to cut through pallets, especially on maps like Ormond or Crows, and then Thrilling Tremors to know where the survivors are to go to the next chase. To get the most out of Pentimento value, I would recommend Pentimento, Thrill the Hunt, Plaything, and for the last one you can go between Devour, Retribution, and Barbecue. To get the most value from Pentimento, pairing it with Plaything and Thrill the Hunt will force people to cleanse over booning. People are less likely to boon a hex that's 45 seconds versus the normal 30 seconds. The last perk is up to you, but I would pair it with Devour for some spice, Retribution for continuous information, or Barbecue for blood points. For the best of both worlds, I would recommend Pain Resonance, Deadman Switch, Pentimento, and Plaything. This build includes a lot of interesting regression and information. Pain Resonance and Deadman Switch is a usual go-to combo, but with Pentimento and Plaything, while it won't give you 5 stacks, the likelihood of getting 1 to 2 is increased, and the slowdown helps greatly. Next is the Stay Injured build. This is Sloppy Butcher, Force Penance, Nurse's Calling, and Thanatophobia. This is fun with a really altruistic team, especially since Staying Injured leaves survivors vulnerable, and with Thanatophobia, it brings a slowdown to the survivors' actions. For a really good early game, I would recommend Lethal, Corrupt, Grim Embrace, and Infectious. Knowing where people spawn is key to ending a game quickly, despite Birdie's built-in lethal pursuer, and with the combination of corrupted Grim Embrace, you can help stall gens to a near standstill, infectious help for snowballs in case anyone happens to be around. Finally, we have an endgame build. No Way Out, Remember Me, Pentimento with 4 stacks, and Blood Warden. While this is a bit trickier with 4 stacks of Pentimento, it's a great challenge since it takes almost 2 minutes for the gates to open. With the combination of No Way Out, that's an extra 3-ish minutes that survivors are stuck in the trial with you, if there are any left. And then on to the latter portion of the builds. These are my favorite unconventional builds. The first one is a shutting down loops and cutting through long distance build. This is Bamboozle, Blood Favor, Coup de Grace, and Fire Up. For a bird only build, I recommend Spies from the Shadows in the 4th perk slot only, because there's no other bird perks, unfortunately, but if they tend to add any more, then this can add on to it. But if you want to be a true birdie main, bring only Spies from the Shadows. Next is the Lilith Omen build. This is Shadowboard and Barbecue only. Shadowboard and Barbecue only go burr. Next is the Entity's Hand build. Corrupt, Grim Embrace, Thrilling Tremors, and Deadman Switch. You gotta keep those gens safe from those pesky survivors, you know? For max injury, I recommend Blood Echo, Hysteria, Thanatophobia, and Gift of Pain, keeping people injured and maximizing the status effects on those who are suffering. And then finally, Fake Huntress build. Since Birdie is technically Huntress and Pyramid Head with extra steps, this one has Iron Maiden, Barbecue, Bitter Murmur, and I'm All Ears. All perks that you would see on a normally good Huntress, but you know, you're a bird, might as well get some use out of that. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for sticking around. This was a really challenging video to make, and I appreciate the support y'all have been giving me in the series. Next, I'll be focusing on maps and loops with the artist before finally tying the series together with general tips and tricks. As always, feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm most active on Twitch, where I'm live weekdays starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, and if you have any, leave any video suggestions down below.